Far across the water, long before the first sighting on the shores of Vera Cruz reached the ears of the Aztec court, preparations had already begun. In a dimly lit chamber on the island of Cuba, Hernán Cortés stood over a large wooden table, maps and parchment spread before him. The air was thick with heat, the faint scent of salt drifting in from the nearby harbor. Outside, the sounds of labor carried through the open window. Men hauling crates, hammering wood, shouting orders as ships were readied for departure. Inside, Cortés remained focused. Across from him stood a junior officer, young but seasoned enough to understand the weight of what they were preparing to undertake. "We currently have 11 ships ready," the officer said, scanning a list in his hand. "All seaworthy, some in better condition than others, but they'll hold." Cortés nodded slightly, his eyes still fixed on the map. "And the men?" he asked. "Just over 500, the officer replied. "Infantry mostly, a handful of crossbowmen, some arquebusiers as well." Cortés finally looked up. "And the horses?" 16, the officer said, "all in good condition." A faint smile crossed Cortés's face. "Good," he said. "They will be persuasive." The officer continued. "We've secured enough food for several weeks," he said. "Salted meat, hardtack, dried legumes. Fresh water has been loaded into casks, though we'll need to replenish as soon as possible after landfall." "And the weapons?" Cortés asked. "Swords, pikes, crossbows," the officer replied. "Gunpowder stores are sufficient for now, but we'll need to conserve." Cortés nodded again, satisfied. "This expedition," he said, almost to himself, "will not be like the others." The officer hesitated for a moment. "There are rumors," he said carefully, "of large civilizations inland, wealth, cities unlike anything we've seen." Cortés's gaze sharpened. "Yes," he said, "I've heard the same." Before the officer could respond, the door to the chamber burst open. Another man rushed in, breathless, urgency written across his face. In his hand, he held a folded piece of parchment. "Captain Cortés," he said, stepping forward, "this just arrived." Cortés took the document without a word and unfolded it. His eyes moved quickly across the page. The room fell silent. The junior officer watched carefully, trying to read his expression. Finally, Cortés spoke. "It is from Diego Velázquez de Cuellar," he said. The officer who had entered nodded. "Yes, sir." Cortés continued reading for a moment longer, then lowered the paper. "Well?" the junior officer asked. Cortés looked at him. "My orders have been rescinded," he said calmly. "I am to abort the mission and return to barracks. Further instructions will follow." The words hung in the air. Silence. Then, "That's impossible," the junior officer said. Cortés let out a quiet breath. "No," he replied. "It is not impossible." He folded the paper slowly and placed it on the table. "It is predictable." The two officers exchanged glances, unsure of what to say. Cortés stepped away from the table, his hands resting behind his back as he began to pace. "You must understand something," he said. "This is not about the expedition." He turned to face them. "This is about him." "Governor Velázquez?" the junior officer asked. Cortés nodded. "There was a time," he began, "when he saw value in me, when my abilities served his purposes." He paused. "But over time, that changed." "How?" the officer asked. Cortés's expression hardened slightly. "Success," he said. He resumed pacing. "I have governed well," he continued, managed resources efficiently, led men effectively, earned loyalty. He stopped. And men like Velázquez do not tolerate being overshadowed. The room remained still as he spoke. History has shown us this before, Cortes continued. Many times. He turned back toward them. Consider Philip II of Macedon, he said, a great ruler, a conqueror, a man of immense achievement. He paused briefly. And yet, even he looked upon his own son, Alexander the Great, and recognized something unsettling. The junior officer listened closely. He saw ambition, Cortes said, a drive that would surpass his own, and it troubled him. Cortes's gaze shifted slightly, distant for a moment. Or take Julius Caesar, he continued, a man who brought glory to Rome through his campaigns in Gaul. He stepped closer to the table. And what did he receive in return? The officer answered quietly, orders to return. Cortes nodded. Yes, he said, orders from the Senate, influenced heavily by Pompey, a man who saw Caesar's success not as an asset, but as a threat. He let the words settle. They demanded he return to Rome, Cortes said, to face trial, to relinquish his command. A pause. And we all know how that ended. The room remained silent. Cortes looked between the two men. This, he said, gesturing to the letter, is no different. The junior officer shifted slightly. So what do we do? He asked. Cortes studied them both carefully. Then he spoke. History, he said slowly, is filled with men who received orders like this. He let the statement linger. Men who obeyed. Another pause. And what do we know of them? Neither officer answered. Cortes did. Nothing. He stepped closer. No one remembers their names, he said. No one records their actions, because they did nothing worth remembering. His voice sharpened slightly. They followed orders. They did their duty. And in doing so, they achieved nothing. He let the silence build. Then he asked the question. Which men would you prefer to be? The officers looked at one another briefly, then back at him. The answer came without hesitation. We wish to be remembered, the junior officer said. The ones who acted, the second added. Cortes nodded once. Good, he said. He turned back to the table, placing both hands firmly against its surface. Then we proceed, he said. The officers straightened. Expedite all preparations, Cortes ordered. We set sail at first light tomorrow. There was no hesitation now. No more delays. Yes, Captain, they responded in unison. And just like that, the course was set. Nearly 2 weeks later, far from the Caribbean shores, Tizoc and his men moved with relentless urgency. The march back to Tenochtitlan was unlike any they had undertaken before. There were no pauses for rest beyond what was absolutely necessary, no deviations, no delays. Whatever they had seen on the beaches near Veracruz had altered everything. The men felt it, even without speaking. By the time the city came into view, their pace had not slowed. Just before reaching the gates, Tizoc raised his hand. The column halted. He turned to face them. You will return to your families, he said firmly. You will rest. The men listened in silence. But you will remain ready, he continued. At a moment's notice, you may be called again. A pause. Then his expression hardened. And you will speak to no one about what we have seen. The weight of those words settled immediately. No one, he repeated. He scanned their faces. The consequence for breaking this command is death. No one moved. No trial, he added. No mercy. Another pause. Ritual sacrifice. The message was clear. The men nodded, one by one. Agreement without question. Tizoc lowered his hand. "Go," he said. The formation broke. Without delay, Tizoc made his way toward the palace. The guards recognized him immediately, granting passage without hesitation. Inside, the atmosphere was alive with activity. Nobles, attendants, and guests filled the corridors. When Tizoc reached the inner chamber, he was stopped by an advisor. "I request an immediate audience with the Emperor," Tizoc said. The advisor hesitated. "His Majesty is currently receiving guests." "Now," Tizoc interrupted. There was something in his tone that could not be ignored. The advisor studied him briefly, then nodded. Moments later, he entered the chamber where Montezuma sat among nobles. The advisor bowed. "My Emperor," he said, "Chief Tizoc has returned from campaign and requests an immediate audience with you, and you alone, on a matter of the utmost importance." Montezuma did not hesitate. He rose. "Excuse me," he said to his guests, and left the chamber. They met in private. Tizoc bowed. "My Emperor," he began, "I thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Montezuma regarded him carefully. "Do not concern yourself with the inconvenience," he said. "Your urgency suggests something of greater importance than ceremony." A pause. "Speak," he said. "What is it that I must know?" Tizoc hesitated, only briefly. Then Tizoc replied, "My Emperor, nearly 2 years ago, you spoke to me of strange things." Montezuma's expression shifted slightly. "Men," Tizoc continued, "beasts, weapons beyond understanding." "I remember," Montezuma said. "Like I said, at that time, I was completely confused as to what you were asking of me. I can now say today that is no longer the case." There was a pause. Montezuma looked down and said nothing. Tizoc continued, "The men and I saw all of the things you mentioned at a beach in Veracruz. We saw beasts and weaponry only meant to be used by gods who used such things. I believe we have witnessed the return of Quetzalcoatl." Montezuma's composure faltered, just slightly. "Did you?" he began. Tizoc cut him off. "They will not speak," he said firmly. "I ordered silence. On their lives." Montezuma studied him. "I sent them home," Tizoc added, "but they are ready." The room fell quiet. Then, slowly, Montezuma nodded. "You have done well," he said, "as you always have." He exhaled quietly. "Go home," he continued. "Rest." Then his gaze sharpened once more. "Tomorrow," he said, "return to me, with a small group of your most trusted men." A pause. "We must prepare."